Apart from this, one more thing which I want to ask with respect to Gojek is, it's actually the reason, like, how I found out about you in the first place, where I remember, I think sometime around this year, sometime around this time last year, you and a bunch of people from Gojek were hosting this show or session where you were talking about the different features you implemented in Gojek and the design uh, process that went behind it. And something which really caught my attention even then, and I can still clearly remember now, is you didn't talk about minimum viable product, you talked about minimum lovable product. That was absolutely captivating the moment I read it and the moment I heard about it. And that's kind of where you talked about the whole process of tipping a delivery agent or a delivery executive, right? I probably would love to know, like, all uh, design decisions or design process, or like how you went about the entire thing, right? I would love to understand, and I already know it's like a very interesting story, and I would love for the audience also to know about
Sorry. Yeah, I think hands down, tipping was one of the most fun products and projects I've done in Gojek. And we built it in a platformized way. So I work for transport and logistics products, right? But we built it in a way that it can be implemented throughout and food and all the other products that we have. And I'll try to keep it concise because it's a very long story. But yeah, let me get started. During the pandemic, we observed that our drivers' incomes actually dropped to 40% of what they were. We were getting lesser orders and they were getting lesser income, which was very concerning for us because it impacts the whole ecosystem, right? And since the likelihood of getting new orders and that all increasing was very low because the situation was very dire and everybody wanted to stay inside, we thought of what are the alternate ways we can actually increase these driver incomes. And tipping was an obvious choice. Like that, obviously, if the drivers get more tips, they'll get more income. But when we looked at data, only 6% of our orders had tips, which is super, super low. And also the tips weren't very high. It was very meager tips that these people were getting. Um, so yeah, I think before jumping to solutions, we decided to actually figure out that why are these tips low and or why are not a lot of our users tipping. So we decided to actually do a very in-depth research, and we figured out the reasons of why users tip and why they don't. And the two top themes that we figured out there was, the first one was that most of the users don't really relate to the essence of tipping. There were reasons like, hey, I'm already paying for my ride. Why do I need to tip? Or there are surcharges and the driver is already earning from this trip and I don't see a point in tipping, which was basically the lack of understanding where tipping is around helping people, not really around payment for the services, right? And the second thing that we observed, which was very, very fascinating for me, was that the digital tipping experience that we had didn't make the users feel good about helping someone. Like then we observed our tipping experience. It was like basically after your trip, you get the notification that, hey, you can tip your driver. You select the tip amount and then it shows a tick mark and says, yeah, tipping complete. But the problem here was that they didn't really have that gratification factor associated with it. Like if you're helping someone, you should feel good about it, right? So that was completely not there. This gave us two very clear areas to work on. First was the empathy part of things, where we needed to establish a personal connection between our users and the drivers, and to actually educate users of what the actual essence of tipping is, that you're helping someone out, right? But to help someone out, you need to care about that person and need to know their story. You don't really just say that, hey, there is this Nigerian friends who you need to help, right? You basically need to know that person, what they're doing, what their plight is, or what their challenges are. So we actually created a component in our tipping widget where we added like an empathy section. We talked about the driver's story. We talked about what challenges they're facing, how many people they're in their family, whether they're teaching their daughter, basically their entire life story, so that they can relate to the users can relate to the drivers and their story and the challenges that they're facing. And the second part was the gratification part, where we made users feel good after they've tipped. So we added a very delightful animation where the driver was smiling and shaking a jar of coins. We even added the sound effect to it. And the goal here was to basically somehow replace the missing real emotion that there is. Obviously, we cannot ever completely replace it. Like a person actually glowing up when they get a tip or feeling happy and feeling that gratitude is something you cannot replace. But we tried to find a workaround and somehow accommodate for it using motion design and animations and all that. And this all actually helped to increase the driver tips and the amount of people who are tipping in Gojek. We also ran a couple of other small experiments. We added a capability where the users can now add thank you notes for the driver so that it's not just about the tip, it's also a message that you're giving. And to make it easy for the users to write this message, because if you just enter a text field, nobody is going to take the effort to write it, or very few people are going to do that. So we actually worked with our UX writers and created a list of 20, 25 messages, small messages like, hey, thanks for the service, or you're awesome, or you're fabulous, or something like that. And we gave a button to just tap, and you can just switch the message, and whichever relates to you, you can just press send. And we've been doing all these things to make the experience simple also, and get a little more engaging and a little more emotional than a very transactional one where you're just paying money to someone, right? There are also small experiments which we did to motivate people to tip more. So, say for example, if someone is tipping 5,000 rupiah, we wanted them to tip say 15,000 rupiah. And how we did that is that we attached an incremental emotion with each of these steps. So there was a small smiling face with the 5,000 one, and a really happy one with the 15,000 one. So we incrementally bumped up these emotions so that you know that if you're tipping a higher amount, you're making the driver happier, which people already knew. But when you see it visually, when you see that smile visually, we thought that it might really help to increase the amounts. And we were surprised to see that like our tipping amount shot up by 2 times, and like 100% bump in tipping amounts has been very, very helpful for our drivers.
Yeah, again, like, a really interesting design solution for a problem, right? And
Mhm.
how you solved it, the entire process just sounds amazing. I'll actually go ahead and attach, like, the link of the case study also in the description for anyone,
Mhm.
who wants to, like, read more about it. It
Sure.
is, like, one of the best case studies I've ever read, and yeah, it is super interesting. I mean, really, really good work with that.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Product Stories for more such episodes.